Hey guys, welcome to today's video, which is all about my first trimester of pregnancy. I'm just going to be reading off of my notes that I've had on my phone. I sort of just wrote things down, like in no particular order, like as I was feeling them, as I was experiencing them. And so yeah, I don't know how well organised this video will be. Since then though, it's been really helpful because just sort of being able to compare trimesters, but also like I bought a lovely pregnancy journal from Amazon that I actually saw recommended on TikTok, and you fill it in throughout pregnancy, but you also fill it in for the first year of baby's life, and then you can give it to baby. Like I'm hoping to give it to them on their 18th birthday, maybe 16th, I don't know, see how long I can wait. Let's talk symptoms and feelings and just being in the first trimester of pregnancy. If you've watched any of my videos so far, you'll know that I've sort of said how much I genuinely have loved being pregnant. Like, I'm ready to have baby number 2. I would do this a million times again. Like, I genuinely have really loved it, and I've been very lucky and blessed that it's been a really straightforward, healthy, easy pregnancy so far. And yeah, I've just really enjoyed it. Now obviously I think a big part of really enjoying it is that this is something we really wanted, that we really planned for, that we really felt was exactly the right time. So like, you know, it's a wish come true really. And I feel very, very lucky every day, honestly. Like, I've really loved it. But that's not to say that the first trimester wasn't without difficulty, because it was. But I just think that sometimes things can be hard and you can also enjoy them. Let's talk about symptoms. So I wrote down straight away before I found out, and then I wrote down sort of things that I was feeling that I was a bit like, am I? But if you watched my I'm pregnant video where I sort of broke it all down, we'd been trying for a while. So I had done a load of pregnancy tests before and had negatives, and so I was like, you know what, I'm not going to get my hopes up. I was feeling these things and feeling like something was different, and then convincing myself, no, what will be. If you are, you'll find out in a couple of days. Sort of don't get too carried away. But yeah, before I found out, I had no appetite, which is the opposite of me before my period. Normally I am ravenous. I could eat a horse every single day. Like it's insane the amount that my hunger goes up in the week before my period, and I had no appetite at all, which was very odd. And I straight away was like, what's going on here? I also had no migraines, and I suffer with chronic migraines. I have occipital neuralgia, but I also really badly get menstrual migraines in the week before. Normally not so bad when I actually get my period, but beforehand they're really, really bad. And I had none, and I was, again, like, suspicious. Like, this has happened every month since I was, like, 11. So why? What's going on? I also didn't have sore boobs. Again, every month before my period I get sore boobs, and I didn't. I felt surprisingly normal. I didn't feel all of the PMS stuff happening. I did, however, feel really fatigued, which I can get before my period, and obviously I deal with chronic fatigue because of my lupus, but I was extra fatigued enough that I wrote it down, so it must have been notable. Then I found out, and it was very, very exciting. And I just wrote down, like, I've done a week by week thing, and I'll highlight any things that I think are important or like interesting. But I'm just gonna read the like notes that I wrote because they're quite funny and weird, and I just obviously jotted them down without thinking. But I put insomnia. I had really bad pregnancy insomnia in the first trimester, and actually I've suffered with insomnia for years, but it's been really like a million times better than it's ever been in the last year or two. It's been the best it's been, sort of thing. I used to go days and weeks and months without proper night's sleep, and I went to sleep therapy for it and everything, and so it sort of brought me back a bit, not gonna lie. Went up, I was like, oh my god, I can't, this is how I used to live. And it made me realise how far I've come, like just how much I don't have it as severe, because then when I had it quite badly in the first trimester, I was like, oh, hello old friend. Just feeling knackered, but not literally just not being able to sleep, just laying there for hours. I also had awful nightmares. I am always a really vivid dreamer and I always do get nightmares, but really, really graphic, upsetting nightmares, which again I've heard is so normal because of all your hormones spiking and going crazy. I was nauseous, but luckily, I consider myself so lucky because I don't know why, but I always sort of thought I'd probably be the unlucky one that gets the horrific morning sickness, and I didn't. I literally was sick 2 or 3 times, and the third time, I don't know that I count because I had a really bad cold, which again is on my list. I'll talk about that in a second, but I had a really bad cold and I was having a coughing fit from how bad the cold was, and it made me sick because in that first trimester I was very nauseous all the time basically, so a lot could make me retch. Like more than normal, obviously. Yeah, so 2 or 3 times I was actually sick. The rest of the time I just felt really sick. Usually I'd sit here and say, oh, it's worse, I'd rather just be sick, which I've said a million times in my life, I'm sure. But actually, the times that I was actually sick when I was in the first trimester, it was the most violent outburst of vomiting I've ever had in my life. Like, I felt like my head was going to explode. It was so extreme, it took me by surprise. So thank God it only happened a couple of times. But yeah, the nausea was bad, and I would be sitting there, like, me and Ben would laugh about it, but I'd be sitting there, we'd just be sitting there watching TV, like, I'm not eating anything, it's not like, there's no like smell or anything, and I would just randomly gag or retch, like, out of nowhere. Like, badly as well, but I'd be like, this is great, this is a great symptom of pregnancy, and I'm like, yeah, I know, it's horrific. Because I had also such a heightened sense of smell, which I still do, every little smell bothered me and made me, and like turned my stomach. Yeah, so nausea was really bad, but not actually that sick, so that's a good thing. Had extreme bloating in the first trimester, like real bad, and nothing I did really changed it, and that's confusing because you can be like, is this my stomach changing or is this just, and I kept saying to Ben, I think it's just bloating, it just feels like bloating. But again, that's a really common symptom. I had no appetite. I think that obviously goes hand in hand with the nausea, but genuinely no appetite. I didn't want to eat anything. Every time I thought of food, it would make me instantly feel sick and be like, nah, what's the point? I just didn't have an inkling to eat at all. Actually, genuinely, my biggest tip for that is I read a load and I was looking stuff up, and I've done a lot of research throughout this whole pregnancy and before, and so many people that have had multiple babies have said that the best thing is to eat little amounts often, like every 2 hours. And genuinely, I had to force myself in the beginning because I felt sick and because I had no appetite, and all the food was very plain, boring food, which I'll get to. But eating every 2 hours, small amounts, saved my life and changed my experience of the first trimester for the better. It was so much better. So that's a top tip. And another top tip, people said for that first thing in the morning sickness when you first get up, because that hit me really bad. Like, as soon as I sat up out of bed, I was like, I'm going to vomit. People said to leave like a plain cracker or a plain biscuit, depending on if you can eat sweet or savoury, first thing in the morning by your bed, and eat it before you even sit up. Like, eat it sort of half sat up, definitely eat it before you stand up. Changed my life. And again, I had to really force feed myself some of the days, and in the beginning it felt so wrong. I'm normally someone who doesn't touch food or drink until I've woken up, come down, done my skincare, brushed my teeth, like had some water. I don't eat anything until then. So it was weird for me, but it changed the game. Honestly, it was the best thing. It meant that my mornings were way more bearable and easy. I opted for a malted milk plain biscuit. I am less of a savoury person in the mornings, to be fair. I always have been. So I went for a biscuit instead of a cracker, but yeah, life-saving. I went completely off of chocolate. Completely. Just didn't, and really sweet stuff in general. And it's sort of continued that way, although very recently I'm much more into chocolate, and specifically though the smell of chocolate more than even the taste of it is like crack to me. So yeah, but no, the in the first trimester, anything sweet I just could not stomach. Yeah, just went off chocolate and tea, cups of tea. Just didn't want it. If I did have it, didn't like it. And everything tasted super weird. Like, most foods tasted different than they normally taste. Specifically, I wrote down Twiglets. They just tasted so bizarre to me. And actually, even now, the other day I had watermelon, because I've been loving watermelon the whole pregnancy. And I had some and it tasted like pure vinegar. I literally spat it out. I was at home, thank God, and alone. But so no one had to see that. But it literally tasted like I'd downed vinegar. And that's been sort of the way it's been. A lot of stuff, not everything, but a lot of stuff tastes weird. I also put dark chocolate, tasted so weird. And I normally prefer dark chocolate to milk. But yeah, anytime I did try it, because I thought, oh, if I did ever fancy something sweet, I was like, but milk chocolate, no. I'll try some dark chocolate. And I was like, absolutely not. It does not taste right. And cocktail sausages. I really fancied cocktail sausages one of the days, but I ate them and I was like, what is this? It just tastes so weird. Super fatigued. That was like the main two things, was like nauseous every day and really tired every day, which is completely normal. Like you're growing a whole entire human being and a whole extra organ to look after that human being. You are of course going to be exhausted. And yeah, I was super fatigued, but I actually found that sleeping in the day was worse for me. Way worse. So if you suffer from this, maybe try, and it's super hard. I was so exhausted some days that I'd literally have to do anything to keep my eyes open because I was falling asleep. But every time I fell asleep in the day, I would wake up feeling 10 million times more nauseous and sick than when I fell asleep. And if I managed to get through the whole day without napping, my nausea would be lessened. I don't know what that's about, but that's the way it was. So I really had to fight napping, which was hard because I also was obviously not sleeping well at night, having insomnia. But listing this all now after saying how much I'm enjoying it, I'm like, I'm going to sound weird. But it's true. It wasn't all obviously doom and gloom. Ultimately, the joy of like being pregnant and us having a baby when it's what we've wanted for ages is like overrides everything. But yeah, really fatigued. It's a whole different type of tiredness than normal tiredness, but also than even my chronic fatigue that I get, because I get chronic fatigue with my lupus. So I am very used to being exhausted all the time. I never really feel at 100% energy. I haven't for like a decade because of my lupus. So yeah, but it felt different. I can't explain it, but it just was different. Pregnancy tired is just different. With the fatigue and the nausea, I would get dizzy sometimes. Just randomly as well. Even if I was just like sitting still, I'd just suddenly be like, whoa, okay. Out of nowhere. And it passed really quickly and it wasn't very often, but it was enough that I wrote it down. Stretching and shooting pains in your belly, like all your ligaments and everything's moving, everything's shifting, everything's stretching, everything's loosening, and you can feel it. I definitely had like stretchy, like I could literally feel things stretching, which I still have, because obviously everything is still continuing to grow. But yeah, just weird, like, oh, what's that? And then it would go again and I'm like, okay, yep, I'm stretching again. I did have freezing cold feet in the first trimester, like it, and I know it was in winter, but yeah, I had freezing cold feet, but so hot at night. The rest of the time I'm like running hot, because I went out with for the first time I felt able to go for like not even a day, but for a few hours out of the house. I went to a garden centre with my mum, and it was winter, and I was literally just wearing a t-shirt, cardigan and trousers, and my mum was like, you need a coat, and I was like, Mum, feel me, I am boiling. Like, I'm running hot. Which again is still something that's happening, and again is super normal. It happens to, I think, most or all pregnant women because of all the extra blood you're producing. Yeah, you run a bit hot. But super hot at night in the first trimester. Like, it was winter and I had to get the fan out of the loft and put it on because I was like, I cannot, I'm waking up in the night boiling. Body hair growing faster. I read this a lot and didn't notice it for a while, and then suddenly I was like, holy crap, like my leg hair, why am I having to shave this often all of a sudden? And although to be fair, it was winter and I couldn't really care less, so I didn't do it that often, but like I noticed how quickly it was coming back for sure. I was surprised at how quickly my boobs started hurting and like feeling swollen, because it happened and like tender, and it happened quite soon. I thought that was something that would happen like in the end of pregnancy. I don't know why, I just assumed, but no, it happened fairly early actually, that my boobs were going through changes. And actually in the first trimester I went up 2 cup sizes. Pray for me, because I am now a J cup. And I'm not joking when I tell you that when I told my family, my brother's partner, who was one of my bridesmaids at my wedding, the first thing she said was, no, she was really sweet to be fair, the first thing she said was, oh, I've waited for this news for so long, and then she went, your boobs are going to be gigantic. Your boobs are going to be massive. And I was like, please, no, they already are massive. They're already gigantic. I do not need any extra. In the first trimester, I went up two cup sizes to a J. Which I'm not going to lie, I didn't even know was a thing. And now I'm panicked because I'm like, well, what the hell is going to happen at the end when my milk comes in? Because then you get even bigger. Yeah, I had to buy all new bras because like I wore mine for the longest I possibly could, because especially when you go up to bigger sizes, bras are so expensive for decent ones. And yeah, I held on as long as I could, but they were causing me pain where they were just way too small. So I was like, no, okay, I've got to bite the bullet. And I remember buying the size up and being like, oh, that'll be fine. It was not. I had to go 2 sizes up. Yeah, so that's been fun. They've actually been the biggest nuisance of the pregnancy, which if you live with gigantic boobs, you'll know that it's like a nuisance. But a lot of the time I'm like, oh, I just wish they were out of the way. Like, they're so heavy and just, yeah. I've had like basically a swollen nose, or like the inner lining of my nose, like sinus problems basically the whole pregnancy. But it was particularly bad in the first trimester, which again is apparently normal because of all the blood and everything. But basically just like feeling like you've got a stuffy nose, even though there's like nothing there to like blow your nose, and like it just is that it's like, yeah, there's like more blood there. It's very, very weird. Pregnancy does suppress your immune system. It like lowers being pregnant literally lowers your immune system. And I haven't had genuinely a cold since 2018. The whole of 2019 I didn't have one. That was the year we were going to Disney, and because colds, like, are normal people viruses, I call them muggle sicknesses, they affect me differently because of my lupus, because lupus is an autoimmune disease. So anything I get in my body that's abnormal, my lupus kicks off because it doesn't know what to attack, and that's when it can start attacking my healthy tissues. So yeah, I suffer really bad if I get any kind of cold, which is why I'm still super vigilant, and was super vigilant about COVID through that, because I could only imagine how horrific that would have been on me with my lupus. But yeah, so I deliberately, because we were going to Disney World, was like, I'm not getting ill, and I didn't get a cold the whole of 2019. And then 2019, obviously COVID hit, and then I didn't have a single cold the whole way through the whole pandemic. And then the first trimester, I had 2 colds. And really, they've knocked me out for about 3 weeks each. Like, I think actually the second one was going into the start of my second trimester. But yeah, really badly they affected me. It was absolutely horrendous, because being bunged up when you feel that sick just makes you feel more sick. And I basically couldn't eat anything, and it was miserable. So I don't like getting colds. I hate them. I forgot how shit they can be, because it's been literally, what's that? 19, 20, 21, 22, like 4 or 5 years. Crazy. So I suffer with acid reflux anyway. I actually got that when I was like at the peak of my health and fitness, when I was in my early 20s. I was doing this job that was super active. If you didn't know, I've been a performer my whole entire life. I worked professionally as an actor, dancer. I loved that stuff, and it's what I've done my whole life until I got ill. And I had this job, it was super active, and basically doing acrobats left, right and centre, and loving life. I loved it. And then one night, I think I just moved in with Ben and at his mum's house, and I woke up and it was like a volcano in my throat, and I was being sick, but like I couldn't be sick. It felt like I was choking. I thought I was dying. I'd never had a health issue up until then. I called the doctor, went the next morning. I called my boss and was like, I'm going to be a bit late because this has happened. I feel like I'm dying. And he was like, yeah, be safe. And they were like, it's acid reflux. And I was like, what? And they were like, yeah, you got to take these tablets. And I remember going to my job that night, performing, running off to be sick, going back out to perform, running off to be sick. It was horrific. And so I've had it for like a decade. So I already kind of knew going into pregnancy when people talk about heartburn and acid reflux and stuff and how bad it can be, that was probably going to be a struggle for me, and it has been. Gaviscon has been my best friend, because I think there is definitely a difference between acid reflux and heartburn, and when you look it up properly, there is a difference. And actually what I've had in pregnancy is really bad heartburn. I don't think my acid reflux has been any different because I've stayed on my meds, they're perfectly safe in pregnancy, and I've not had any full-blown attacks of that like that in the night at all. But just random heartburn, it just feels different. I can't really explain the difference, but it just feels different to acid reflux. Random heartburn, basically after anything you eat, anything at all, or drink. Sometimes you just have water and then your body goes, oh, here, have some heartburn. So Gaviscon is your best friend. From about 10 weeks on, I started to feel a little bit better. Started to feel more human, started to be able to go out more and like just do more normal things that I would do in my normal everyday life before I was pregnant. Slightly less fatigued, like I put 10% better, but that feels like a lot when you're not feeling great. That's also the same time that my bloating went down, but my stomach started feeling harder, very low down. Like I could feel a change for the first time in my belly about 10 weeks, and that I could finally stop eating as much plain food. Basically the first trimester, my worst thing wasn't the nausea or fatigue, it was the boredom that came with having to live off of plain bread, plain crackers, plain biscuits, water, and that's about it. Like I literally couldn't stomach anything not plain, and I am a flavour girl. I like everything to have lots of seasoning, lots of sauce, lots of spice. I like flavour, I like strong flavoured foods. I'm salivating now because it's making me hungry talking about it. But yeah, I do, and I could not. I had to have everything plain, and I was so bored of it. I was so bored of it. And so about 10 weeks, I could finally have a little bit of flavour, like maybe some cheese on toast instead of just plain toast. And like that, it just changed my life. Everything tasted 10 million times better suddenly because I hadn't eaten it for so long. And at about 11 weeks, I felt well enough to go swimming again, which was incredible. And I text Ben being like, technically, I'm a submarine because babies are there and in the water, technically. So now every time I go swimming, he goes, okay, SS Jess. But yeah, I finally had enough energy at 11 weeks to go swimming, which was incredible. I loved it. She had an early scan at 11 weeks because of my lupus, because of being high risk because of my lupus. I had an 11-week scan. That was our first time we'd seen baby, and I obviously cried. It was absolutely incredible seeing their little heart beating. I could not believe it, and also just like we both couldn't believe at 11 weeks how much they already looked like a tiny baby. Like obviously they looked tiny, but I was expecting more of a blob, and it wasn't. It looked like a little baby, and it was incredible. I sort of wrote down that I think I only enjoyed one meal the entirety of the first trimester, which was for my dad's birthday. We went to our favourite Indian restaurant. My family have been going there for like 15 years. It's incredible. We love it. I want to go back now, actually. I'm going to say that to Ben when he gets home. I didn't enjoy really anything else. Like I said, it was just plain food. It was just about getting by. It wasn't like I enjoyed anything. And yeah, but we went to the Indian restaurant and I could barely eat anything. That's the other thing. I could barely eat a thing. Like I had to eat tiny amounts. I'd get full so quickly, but it was annoying because then like an hour later I'd be hungry again. So often I'd be eating something and then be like, and Ben would be like, oh, are you done? Do you want me to take it? And I'm like, no, just wait. I'll need it again in about half hour. Like, I'll just leave it here. And yeah, like I always get onion bhajis as my starter at the Indian because they do the best ones there. Like they're so good and crispy and tasty and spicy. Yes. And they give you two. They are fairly big, but normally I eat that fine. And with my main, I could only eat one, and I was like, I don't know if I can eat anything else this whole meal. Like one onion bhaji and I'm done. But having that much flavour at about, it was right before I was 12 weeks, was incredible. I loved it so much. It was like the best thing I did for ever eat. So I think that was the only meal I enjoyed the whole first trimester. I think a massive part of why I've enjoyed it so much is that I just find it incredible what our bodies do. Like women are amazing. The way everything that's happened when my body's changed, I've been in awe of it. Like, I've been absolutely like, this is just amazing. The fact that your body just knows what to do and does it blows my mind, because it's just such a complicated process. When you really, like, if you're pregnant and you get one of the, like, the apps that we've got that we read every week with the updates of like how baby's doing and what's going on with your body, it'll blow your mind like how much is really going on in there. And you're just going about your life, obviously sometimes feeling a bit crap, but I just think it's amazing. So I've sort of gone into pregnancy with this sense of wonder and amazement, and taken enjoyment even in the weird symptoms that have sort of come, like, because I'm like, it's another sign that everything's going the way it should be. And yeah, I think as well, like, I don't want to downplay that it's difficult or like be toxic positivity, but equally I think most of the stuff you hear throughout life about pregnancy is terrifying. Which I get, because there are a lot of crazy and scary and like awful symptoms that you can get. But I just think personally, I've heard more and more of women really hating it and finding it difficult. And I think that's maybe why I went into it with like preconceptions that I was going to really struggle and that I was going to have really bad morning sickness, I was going to have all this. And I just sort of would like to be honest and also be that little pocket of positivity about pregnancy, especially because of being plus size as well. I think there's just like a whole extra added layer of bullshit negativity that comes with being plus size and pregnant. And just to be able to say that I have found it blissful and I have really enjoyed it, and so far it hasn't been as hard as I expected it to be. And I've really loved it, and I already know I'm going to miss being pregnant when I'm not pregnant. Yeah, and I want to say that, and it sometimes feels weird saying that, because I'm not trying to at all like discount anyone finding it difficult, because it is also difficult, but both can be true. And I'm sort of in that phase of life where I look at a lot of stuff. I used to be very like, no, it's one or the other. I've had to learn through lots of therapy that things can be both, and that's the truth with pregnancy too. Like, it is difficult, but it's also wonderful, and I have loved it. Yeah, just because I don't want anyone, you just don't know what you're going to get with pregnancy. And every woman, like my mum's had 3 kids, all of her pregnancies were different, you know, that happens with every woman. Every pregnancy is different, even for each woman. So like, you know, I can't guarantee anyone watching this that you're going to have a dreamy experience, but you also might not have a terrible one. And like, no one ever says that part. I think you're warned of all the scary stuff, which can be helpful, but it can also scare you. And yeah, I've loved it. So yeah, that's it. That's been my first trimester. I'm very excited to share it with you guys. If you've had babies, if you are pregnant and you've had any of these symptoms or any other weird ones that I haven't listed, put them down below. Another big thing people ask me about all the time, obviously, is cravings. I genuinely haven't really had any strong cravings. I've had like 2 maybe that were like one-time things. Like genuinely in the very early bit of my second trimester, I was in the swimming pool swimming and I was suddenly like, I have to have pizza, like right now. I have to have a pizza right now. And I had not had a pizza the whole time because the idea of it made me feel sick. And suddenly I was just like, I have to have it right now. And then another morning I woke up and I instantly was like, I have to have peanut butter on toast for breakfast. Like that's all I want. And I cannot think of anything else until I eat that. So it's been like that, but then that was just those one-offs. It's not been like the whole time I've craved X, Y, and Z. Although I will say I've had what I called safe foods, and the main 2 things of those are jubbly ice lollies, the little Mr. Freeze ones, and crisps, any crisps. The entire pregnancy, they're the only things, and I call them safe foods because they're the only things where they didn't make me feel sick before, during, or after eating them. If I thought about eating them, it didn't make me feel sick. Whilst I was eating them, it didn't make me feel sick, and it didn't make me feel sick after eating them. Crisps, like, because even plain crackers and even bread, just bread and butter, made me feel ill the rest of the time. Sometimes water even. But yeah, crisps and ice lollies, sweet the whole way through. Also, top tip, get yourself like sweets to suck on or chewing gum. I got some like Chupa lollies as well for something with a bit more flavour, because I did in the early stages have Humbugs and Werther Originals. They are great for when you are nauseous but you want a bit of taste because you've been eating so much plain shit, or you've not eaten. I often tested myself with like, can I have a meal right now, by having like a Werther's Original first, and either my body would go, yeah, this is alright, you could eat, or no, absolutely not, that's enough. And also in the car, if you get, because I get car sickness anyway, before I was pregnant, I've had it my whole life, but if you in the car have something to suck on or something with a bit of flavour or a chewing gum, I just found that really helps keep the nausea at bay. The thing was, early on in pregnancy I could not stand anything high-waisted, and all my clothes are high-waisted. My whole life I've preferred high-waisted things, and I genuinely couldn't. Even leggings, I'd have to like roll all the way down. I normally have them up to my tits. I'd have to roll all the way down. I didn't like the feeling of anything being on my stomach in the whole first trimester. I just felt uncomfortable with it. Everything, high-waisted knickers, nope, like anything. Couldn't wear anything hot up, and even like dresses that were too tight around the middle, like that would normally like tuck you in at the waist. Nope, didn't want it. Didn't feel comfortable in it. Hated it, which is a weird thing. That's it. I think that's all I've got to say about the first trimester. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give it a like and do subscribe to my channel. I would love to have you here. I'm gonna be documenting my pregnancy journey as much as I feel comfortable to do so. And yeah, I want to bring you some like fat pregnant fashion content soon, because there's a serious lack of that on the internet. And I've actually been loving dressing my bump and dressing my body now that it's changed a bit, and finding what I feel comfortable in. So yeah, I hope you're having a lovely day wherever you are, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!